All right, here we go, guys. The Battle of Britain, one of the most pivotal moments again in all of human history. I think it's safe to say it's one of the top, maybe five significant battles in all of history. Because if this battle went any other way, we'd be looking at a very different world we live in today. And I'm going to show you some images, talk about the battle, give you some details on it. Again, there's so much more to this battle than what I'm going to give you in this short lecture. But you definitely want to know all the details I'm giving you as you're studying our World War II topic. And this image is pretty remarkable. This is it from England, the rubble that was seen in the battle. So what's going on? What's the Battle of Britain all about? So we'll start with something called Operation Sea Lion. So first you need to know Operation Sea Lion, and then from there we'll get into what the Battle of Britain was. So Operation Sea Lion was Hitler's plan to invade England, an amphibious attack, kind of D-Day in reverse. And so the British, were worried about this, obviously. The British were so worried about this that they actually took all the street signs down in England because they thought if the Germans ever invade Britain, they want all the street signs down. So if the Germans arrive, they may have a map, but you don't have the street signs, you don't know where they're going. That's how worried they were about this. And the British had prepared tens of thousands of coffins even before any of these battles against Britain began because they anticipated so many deaths that they said we won't have time to build coffins even. So that gives you a sense of what is going on here during this time period. So Operation Sea Lion, Hitler needs to, get across the English Channel to do this. England's an island. But to get across the English Channel, the problem he's going to have, of course, is yes, the British Navy, but more importantly, the British Air Force. Because if you got your ships and you're sailing them across the channel, you don't need another ship. You could just take your planes from above and bomb the German ships, and that's it. You're safe. And so Hitler knew this. Hitler may have been absolutely evil, but he wasn't completely stupid, and he understood that he had to get rid of the British Air Force in order to be able to make this happen. And so when you talk about the Battle of Britain, primarily it is an air battle. That's what this is all about, starting around July of 1940. And as you can see, it's going to go on for a while until about October of 1940, right? So it's definitely one of these battles that last a little bit longer than you could see like the Battle of France. And so Operation Sea Lion is the plan. Before he can launch Operation Sea Lion, he needs to somehow defeat the British Air Force, known as the RAF. Make sure you know that term, Royal Air Force. And if you don't know it, the German Air Force was known as the Luftwaffe. Now, this is the thing right off that I also want you to know is that the RAF was outnumbered about 3-1. For every one RAF plane, there were 3 German planes. And so if you're looking at this moment, again, France has fallen by now, the United States is not in the war, Russia's not in the war. Are there any advantages that the British have? And they have good planes called the Hurricanes and Spitfires. Those were one things. They had amazing pilots. That was something else. The British had great pilots at the time. In fact, one of the things Churchill once said, never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few. Referring to the RAF because these were the guys who protected England during the war. And there weren't that many of them. There were still a lot, but not enough that they could constantly be ready. So the RAF pilot stories where they would sleep in their gear because if the air raid siren went off that hey, Germans are invading by the air, and one of the other things the British had was radar, so that was good. They had the radar. They at least knew when the Germans were coming. And so, by having the radar, they say, oh, the Germans are coming. But by the time, if you're sleeping, by the time you get up, get in your gear, get into flying altitude to meet them, it's too late. So they would actually sleep in their gear. They would sleep with very short sleeping amount of times, but they would have to be able to get up there and start flying. Now, even though they were outnumbered greatly, 3-1, as the battles went on, see, Hitler had 2 major plans. I guess you should know this as well. Hitler had 2 major plans in the Battle of Britain. One, destroy the RAF planes, and 2, destroy the airfields. There's kind of 2 stages to this. So first you destroy the planes and the airfields. If you destroy the planes and the airfields, then you can launch Operation Sea Lion. And so, he's trying to destroy the RAF planes, but he's not succeeding. What ends up happening is after a bit of fighting, just to give you some numbers here, the Luftwaffe lost about 2,600 planes and the RAF lost about 600. So about 2,600 losses for the Luftwaffe, 600 planes lost for the RAF. So the RAF were holding their own. Even though they were outnumbered, they were still shooting down more German planes. So this goes on for a while. And after this goes on for a while, and Hitler sees that he's not destroying the RAF planes themselves fast enough, and he's not destroying the airfields fast enough, you get to the next stage of the Battle of Britain. And that's when Hitler decides to start targeting the cities, the Blitz. And the idea there is you just bomb the cities to break the will of the British people. And this is such an important part of the Battle of Britain, that he's bombing them. At one point, London was bombed for 70 nights in a row. Every single night for 70 nights in a row, the city of London was bombed. And the devastation was massive. But this is the thing. He could not break the will of the British people. And so let me show you some pictures as we continue to talk about this. This is the rubble, right? This is the destruction that you would see from the Blitz. You would see this throughout London. But let me show you this image. This is an image inside a shelter during the war. And I love this image because if you look at their expressions, they're all smiling. And, outside you had this massive rubble, and inside these folks are all smiling and happy. And, it goes to one of the lessons I've always taught my students, and a lesson I live by. You can't control what happens in your life, only how you react to the things that happen. And I believe in my previous lecture, I also told you the story of the Queen's mom and, how she was so resilient and she wouldn't break. And, this was the attitude. We could take it. That was the mantra. We could take it. No matter what you do to us, we could take it. And so even in this most devastating moment, they kept their spirits up. And again, that is because of the Churchill speeches and the Queen's mom and other people as well who just were so resilient in the face of such darkness. I love this image as well, this rubble everywhere, and this guy just puts a little sign up, business as usual. Again, it reflects the attitude of the British people during the war. Here's another one of the shelters, and you can see what they use. I like this image because this is for, if you don't recognize, this is where the underground, right, the rail tracks that they have in England, the tubes, and so that was often used as a shelter during the air raids, and you could just see the mass number of people that had to be piled in there during the war. All right, guess who this is? So this is a cool little photo I found. This is an image of Queen Elizabeth today, Queen Elizabeth II, and her little sister, and so it shows how long she's been around. So this is just an image I found as I was looking at some photos of World War II from the Battle of Britain. So I thought that was just kind of a cool one to share. And this is one of a shot down plane. And, one of the things I always like sharing is like stories from people who lived through these things. And I had a neighbor who passed away many years ago, but he was a child who lived in England during the Blitz, during World War II. And he told me this story that I've always shared, which is what would the kids do after the Blitz? So, you'd have the bombings, the planes would be shot down, kids would run out into the street, and they would look for scrap metals of German planes, and they would collect them, and they would trade them like kids would trade baseball cards or whatever. And you thought to yourself, wow, this is a life of a 5, 6, 7, 8-year-old child is finding shrapnel of German planes and trading them as, hey, we found some plane shrapnel. But you can see here, this is what you're seeing on a rooftop here. So I think that's pretty cool image as well. And so all of this is part of the Battle of Britain, and they do survive. They hold on, and they manage to eventually get Hitler to give up. And Hitler is not able to destroy the RAF. He's not able to destroy the will of the British people. And guess what? Operation Sea Lion never takes place. Now, when this happens, is this the end of the war? Not at all, right? I mean, this just means Hitler did not conquer Britain. We still have a lot more to go, and I'm going to show you a map here in a second. But real quick, one thing I always like to share with my students is this other, what I call lighter side of Churchill, because everybody knows Churchill, Bulldog Churchill with his big speeches and everything. But Churchill was also known for giving some funny little one-liners. He had a bit of a wit. And so just to mix things up a bit, I'm going to share just a few of these, and I'm going to go to one final map here and say what's coming up next. So a few of Churchill's lines. So this is one he talked about, Neville Chamberlain. Remember from my previous lecture, Neville Chamberlain was the one who appeased Hitler, and Churchill was always against that. And so Neville Chamberlain died pretty quickly after, as this is all taking place. And people went to Churchill and go, what should we do with Neville Chamberlain? And he said, embalm, cremate, and bury. Take no chances. All right, so don't let him come back. He said, an appeaser is someone who feeds a crocodile hoping to be eaten last. So there's one. Switzerland, Switzerland's always neutral in every war. And so somebody asked Churchill about that one. And he said, look at the Swiss. They've enjoyed peace for centuries. And what have they produced? The cuckoo clock. In other words, why aren't you getting involved? This is guy General Montgomery. General Montgomery goes to Churchill because Churchill was always known for drinking and smoking and all that. So he goes, Montgomery goes to Churchill, I neither drink nor smoke, and I'm 100% fit. And Churchill responds, I both drink and smoke, and I'm 200% fit. And then here's a couple that are really funny. There was a man named George Bernard Shaw, who was a playwright at the time. And so he sends a telegram to Churchill, and he says, I am reserving 2 tickets for you for my premiere. Come and bring a friend if you have one. Churchill replies, impossible to be present for the first performance. Will attend the second if there is one. And then one of my all-time favorite, this is just a classic Churchill line. There was a lady named Nancy Astor, and she was getting in this big argument with Churchill, and she goes to him, Winston, if I were your wife, I'd put poison in your coffee. To which Churchill responded, Nancy, if I were your husband, I'd take it. And so, he has all these little one-liners as well, which I just kind of like to share with my students and stuff. So what is next? What do we mean after the Battle of Britain? So the Battle of Britain, as I said, if you look at our map here, doesn't go the way Hitler wanted. He's not able to break the RAF. And so, he's not able to invade Britain. Operation Sea Lion doesn't take place. What is Hitler then going to do? Well, he's not done. He looks at his map and he decides, I want more. He's got, France. He's got obviously allied with Italy. He's got all these nations we have talked about already. What's left? Well, the only real thing left is, of course, the Soviet Union over here. And so what he's going to do next is focus his attention to the East. And you go, well, I thought he had a non-aggression pact with the Soviet Union. I thought he wasn't going to invade the Soviet Union. Well, guess what, folks? Hitler lied. And, of course, this was always part of his plot to eventually move into the Soviet Union. So that's going to be our next story, kind of his movement into the East as he goes into the Soviet Union, how that will draw the Soviet Union in the war. We still need to talk about how the United States gets involved in the war, the Pacific, and so there's a lot more we're going to cover, but this primary lecture I wanted to focus on the Battle of Britain. All right, hope all that was clear. You got all the details of the battle. Again, there's a little bit more in your books, and you can find a ton of other information on the Battle of Britain. But again, just being a survey course, I just want to give you at least the highlights, some of the key kind of events and what the battle was mainly about. All right, thank you, everyone. I hope you found that interesting. Have a great day.